Okay, my outstanding friends, wait till you see this. What do you think you're looking at there? Just take your time and look at it and start to think about what you're seeing. Look at all this, like a, I don't know, like a cloth with all the little, look at this, even a pinchy little wrinkle in there. And these wrinkles and so forth, all that little flappy open stuff. Now, what else do we see? We see some ball looking things with little like straps looking coming off them and all this little, all that stuff. What's going on there? Well, guess what that is? That's going to be some guy's countertop. That is flat as a pancake. It's not wrinkled like that. Let me show you something. They call it Cygnus suede granite from Brazil. This is a countertop slab. I'm going to show you an anatomical shot of this in a second. And I also have a granite countertop here. But mine is completely different. And wait till you see what mine is. It's going to blow your mind. Let me show you what this is anatomically. Alright, I'm telling you, that was interstitium. That slab of suede was this, and wrinkled like here and there as the guy was all crunched up and so forth. And then they cut it like this so you could see these wrinkles. And they cut right through some of these balls. And we could see these straps, and it was stretched like this, and some areas were wrinkled. Now, it comes even bigger than what you just saw. In us, this is microscopic, but it can come to this size too here on Earth, and even bigger. And this is the skin, and that is that interstitium, all that flappy stuff. And if this was solid, they would have cut it just like this, and we would have seen the exact same pattern as this right here. And in that particular one, that particular granite, it went into a little bit of a wrinkle zone. And guess where that happened? It happened elsewhere, and it happened on Mars. And I'll show you this exact pattern on Mars. Mars was 100% alive at one point, and I believe it's dead now because of the impact with Venus when we were almost impacted back 1500 BC. You know, this is a pretty good idea of everything that's going on. We saw the interstitium. We saw this is the exact same as this, and the balls have eroded and are in the mud of the red flesh that has eroded down. Now, these balls are identical to these balls over here. These are called the Moki marbles. They're in Utah. And this below is the basement layer of skin, and everything else has eroded off in the moisture of at some point in the past. Now it's kind of dry out there. Now, this obviously is on the side of the ocean. It's eroding every day. So they're becoming part of the shoreline. Now, this is what interstitium looks like, just like we saw in that piece of stone. That's what it actually really looks like. Alright, I showed you the Moki marbles. These are the Mars blueberries. They're exactly the same thing because Mars was exactly the same as Earth until it was killed during that terrible event. Now, this is the Mars crab. I've shown this a lot of times. And that is an artery and a vein. And these are the little blood vessels that go in to service the muscle tissue. These are sarcomeres, shown it a million times. Now here's exactly what's going on with that granite, that suede granite. Some of them are pulled apart and the balls are still in there and they cut straight down. So what we're seeing is these flap and this wave and a flap and a wave. And that is just like if they cut down through that. And this is on the surface of Mars. It's called the Mars Morse Code. Look up some of these things and see if you think Mars was ever alive and these are biological features, because I've certainly, absolutely, there's no question, that's what they are. And Earth was alive, and so was Mars. Mars is apparently dead now. Alright, now if anybody knows Chinese, or whatever his writing is, I believe it's Chinese, I would like to know what that says. I'm going to home in on a little closer. Alright, take your time, look at it, and see if anybody can figure out what that says. I would absolutely like to know. Now, I'm going to show you my countertop. And I'm going to tell you what, I think my countertop is made out of exactly what this guy is doing, is grinding people up to the tiniest little bits and pieces with this wheel of torture. Wheel of death. You see what it's doing? It's going to crack it up into little bits and pieces, little squared chunks. And that's what my countertop is made of. And the reason they're doing that is because they extracted the metals from all of these bodies by draining all the fluids and congealing the metals. That's what I take, because I couldn't find any metals in my counter except one tiny piece. I'm going to show you. Alright, what I want to show you something is you got muscle and you got tendon and you got bone and all that sort of stuff, and then you got some other types of materials in your body. But primarily the tendon comes in these little slabs like this, and of course so does the muscle, but the tendon comes in like little blocks. Does that look familiar? Tendon and ligaments. Alright, look, this is what it is right here. And this is all made out of collagens. Matrix of collagen, protoglycans, glycosan, blah, 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 and a few exocytes to create the high tensile strength tendons. They're very tendon, type 1 collagen. Very, very tough stuff. And that's exactly what we just saw there and on Mars. It's the interstitium. You know, this is interesting. It looks like normal tendon in that slab of granite, but it also has the degenerative tendon look to it too. Of course, the thing's dead, so... Alright, here's what you saw that guy with that grinder. He's cutting up chunks of this stuff. And this is tough. And he's going to cut up little blocks of it. And then, of course, all the red fleshy stuff. And I will show you that in my countertop. Alright, this is what I'm going to be showing you, all ground up, and you'll see little blocks of white like that, and then of course the red stuff, and that's what comes from interstitium and fascia, which this is. And this particular is a latch now that latches in between every chunk of your body so that it attaches to the next chunk. It's one big system now. They're calling it an organ system, really. It's called the interstitium organ system. And this little latch here, I have shown, is different than any of the other stuff. And like even on this little bitty lung, that's the latch right there. That's a lung. And there's the latch on the bottom. They all have that latch in the mud fossils and even in, you know, obviously in living tissue. And what this stuff does is what they were grinding up. And there's metals in these things. And I think they were trying to get the metal out of the body fluids. And what was left over, they just piled up somewhere and they cut it up and made my countertop out of it. Now look at this. This is my countertop, and it's granite, and there's quite a bit of it. I didn't measure it exactly, but let's say there's 20 feet. It's every bit of that plus, and there's an island and everything. Now, that's the only piece of metal I could find. Literally, I looked a lot. I obviously didn't look every little bit and piece, but I looked a lot, and it's just like this. It's just like this. Now that happened to be attached to a piece of black blood, which is the vein blood, which is hard. The red blood pretty much, it looks like they washed it right out. And what's left over is these chunks of white. And you say, oh, Roger, so what? That big deal. That doesn't mean anything. Yes, it does. Because I'm going to show you what they really are. They are tendon chunks from somebody grinding them up. You see that? Look at these things. Those are tendon chunks. Your body doesn't grow like that. They don't make chunks like that. That's not what your body does. This is not any organization whatsoever of body tissue. This is just a mess of globs of, and I looked at it carefully, very carefully. Look at all these little blocks and chunks. They grind it all up and they just washed it all out and they threw this stuff in a pile. And then now they're cutting it and selling it for pretty good money. I'm telling you, that's all that is. That's all that is. Now let's look at the further distance away. You see, it's all the same. So you can see all they are is blocks. Blocks everywhere. And very little really of the red blood left, because it apparently they washed it out. Now I don't know if they washed it with chemicals, or I would suspect they used some kind of chemistry here to, you know, like acids or salts or I don't know what. And what was left over was what you're looking at right there. I want to say thank you to Dennis, my friend, that sent me these pictures. If this isn't a match, I don't know what is. And this is suede from Brazil. They call it granite suede. And this is, you know, if you can't see I mean, it's the same. It's identical. There is no difference whatsoever. None, zero. Okay, I'm just going to leave you with this. Let's step into reality. Even though it seems to be insanity, it's reality. So let's look at it and then decide if it's insanity. What I just showed you is very, very difficult to just dismiss and walk away from without any investigation. If you choose to do that, then I have very little respect for your scientific acumen. Let's just leave it at that. All right, this is the scar that runs on Mars. It's as long as the United States is wide. And I believe this was during the impact when Venus collided with Mars.